Hello there viewer, you find me inside the Kia Carnival. This specifically is the updated model of the Carnival, and when Kia updated it, they decided to make the price almost double of what the outgoing model was. 63 lakh rupees is quite a steep increase. But then we also have with us the Toyota Vellfire, which starts at 1.22 crore, which is double of what you pay for the Carnival. So do you really get double the space, double the feature, double the fun with the Vellfire, or is that not the case? Time to find out. I'll be dealing with the similarities and differences between these vehicles in the form of certain questions that you as a viewer might have. But if you want proper reviews of these vehicles individually, then you can click on the card on the top left and get to those reviews. If you've not seen them already, then maybe it's a good time to go and subscribe to our channel so that whenever we put out a new video, you can go ahead, watch them, like them, and keep following whatever we bring to you. Despite being the more affordable of the two, the Carnival actually is bigger in size. It has a bigger footprint. Not only does it have a longer length, it also has a longer wheelbase, and it is also wider. But the Vellfire is much taller than the Carnival. It means that taller folks like me will have a bit more room on the inside, and you also sit a little bit higher up. But the downside is that when you go around a corner, that height can be a bit of a hindrance, as I'll explain later on. But then the Carnival has a much larger boot in comparison to the Vellfire. In the Vellfire, if you have all three rows up, you basically have no boot space. While in this one, you can easily fit a human in there and then also keep some luggage. So in terms of the overall size, in terms of the space and all provided, I think the Carnival definitely has a bit of an edge over the Vellfire. In the battle for the comfort in the all-important second row, the Vellfire definitely nudges ahead of the Carnival. Both of them come with captain seats in the second row, but the ones in the Vellfire are so much more luxurious. I mean, they look like something you would find in the VIP section of a very expensive movie theater. And you have a lot of electronic adjustments so that you can set it to the way that you like it and just cruise in comfort. Also, this gets a 15-speaker JBL sound system, which I feel sounds much more balanced, rich, and has a better surround sound effect than the 12-speaker Bose sound system in the Carnival. The seats inside the Carnival are also decently comfortable. In fact, they'll be very good for longer journeys as well. And you also do get Ottoman support, which is great, but like I mentioned, they just lag behind the Vellfire a little bit, especially if you see that the headroom is not as much as there is in the Vellfire, and there are some small quirky things which I do not like. First of all, the AC controls are all the way over that side, so unless you're seated here, you will have a hard time reaching the AC controls. These air vents are not in the best placed position. Even after changing the position a little bit, I cannot get the air to be directed on my face, so that's not ideal. But the worst part here is that you cannot access the full range of motion in the seat's default position. You have to pull a lever on this side and then pull it on the inside, and then you'll be able to access the full range of motion. Otherwise, it clashes with the panel at the back. And also, the adjustment to move the seat front or back is also manual, so you have to pull another tab and then push your way to the front or the back. So all of that is not the best, especially when pitted against a competition like the Vellfire. Even in the third row experience, the Vellfire trumps the Carnival. First of all, getting into the third row itself is a simpler process in the Vellfire because you just have to pull on one tab and the entire seat can be moved forward, and then you just step inside. In contrast to the Carnival, where you have to push both the seats to the sides and then walk gingerly between them and then get awkwardly into the third row. This process is much easier. Right now, the second seat has been set to my preference, and you can still see that I have a lot of knee room and a decent amount of leg room. The under thigh support is understandably not that great, and I can also recline this back to give myself a bit more comfort. The armrest is nice and the headroom is much better here in the Vellfire than the Carnival, and that again is the byproduct of the taller height of the Vellfire. And as a bonus, if you want it for whatever reason, you can pull on this tab and then bring this seat forward or take it back. Now this will give you a little bit more boot space if you don't have anyone too tall in here, or if you have a taller passenger, you can just slide it back. Now while the seat here is comfortable, like I mentioned, the headroom is not that great and the knee room definitely is not as good as the Vellfire, which is a little bit surprising, but I guess all that space that you would want here has gone in the back because this has a bigger boot, as I showed earlier. But I do get adjustment to sort of recline this a little bit and relax in that manner. Both vehicles come with cup holders, a USB Type-C port and AC vents for the third row. So in that regard, both of them are evenly matched. To answer that question, we are deliberately going through a slightly broken patch in the Vellfire, and the ride quality is just so plush, so amazing. This has quite a softly sprung suspension setup and it just gobbles up all the undulations in the road. When I say that this is the superior vehicle out of the two, there is no question about it. Yes, the Carnival 2 does a pretty good job of absorbing most of the bumps and the potholes, but I think it's just slightly stiffer than the Vellfire, which has its own plus points. But in terms of absolute comfort, you'll be just so much more comfortable in here. Combine that with, like I mentioned, the comfortable seats and all the ambience and everything, and the Vellfire is definitely the more comfortable of the two. Since the Carnival and the Vellfire go about propulsion in two very different ways, the Carnival having a diesel motor and the Vellfire having a petrol with a battery attached to it, battery and a motor. So obviously the Carnival is at a bit of a disadvantage. Now, don't get me wrong, this is quite a nice and mostly silent cabin, but compared to the Vellfire, the diesel clatter can sometimes, when you put your foot down, that groan can start seeping into the cabin. And more than that, I think it's just the ambient noise which kind of seeps in a little bit more compared to the Vellfire, which puts the Carnival a notch below the Vellfire. So if you're on the highway and a big truck is passing you, you will definitely hear the sound. The noise from the road also seeps inside the cabin relatively more than it does in the Vellfire. And then considering the hybrid nature of the Vellfire, it can run on pure EV power for a few kilometers, which means it will be super duper silent. So that again gives the Vellfire a few more brownie points. But it's not all rosy with the Vellfire because it comes with an eCVT, and that tends to groan when you push it too. So it's not the engine per se which is making the noise, but more the gearbox. The Carnival has a 2.2 litre diesel engine, while the Vellfire has a 2.5 litre petrol hybrid motor. The power output in both vehicles is almost the same, but this being a diesel engine has a lot of torque, much more than what the Vellfire offers, and that grunt you really enjoy when you are pushing this vehicle. Despite the massive size, despite the weight, it gets along fairly quickly, and the suspension setup also helps with making this a more driver-friendly car, I would say, than the Vellfire, because it sits a little lower, because the suspension is slightly stiffer than the Vellfire around certain corners or when you're splitting lanes. This one inspires a lot more confidence. Again, the control that you're getting, the body roll is lesser than what you feel in the Vellfire. The taller proportions really hurt its characteristics around a corner. So that ways, I think the Carnival is a much more driver-focused car. If you are someone who will be spending more time behind the wheel and you want a little bit of driver engagement in your family-friendly MPV, then the Carnival definitely is the better vehicle to drive. And if you look at the front seats and the dashboard over here, I feel once again the Carnival does a slightly better job of giving you a more conventional and nicer looking cabin than what the Vellfire does. In the Vellfire, you feel like you do not really have that much space as much as you do over here, and even though the Vellfire gets a bigger 14-inch screen while this gets a 12.3-inch one, the interface on this is so much better. Trust me, the resolution and the quality of the screen is better in the Vellfire, but just the layout and the way you go about finding things in the menu is so much simpler in the Kia than it is in the Toyota. And the same goes for the instrument cluster as well. The Vellfire has a lot of buttons which I really like, small things like changing the display brightness and also switching between the trip meters and resetting them. There are separate switches for those, which I really like. But then just the overall experience, I would say I really like it here than in the Vellfire, at least when it comes to the front row. While I'm not a big fan of this almost tank-like steering wheel, after spending some time with it, I did get used to it. I understood the controls better, but I will still pick the steering wheel design of the Kia over this. But one difference between the two is that while the steering wheel in the Kia is manually adjustable, this one gets power adjustment, which is so much easier. One more thing you have to keep in mind when choosing between these two vehicles is that if you're living in a city like Delhi, then the Vellfire has a longer life than the Carnival because that is a diesel car and this is a hybrid. So you get 5 more years with this vehicle, you get to spend more time with it and you get more worth out of your money. On paper, the Carnival actually has more ground clearance than the Vellfire, but right here we have the optional step plate, which is very helpful, but it does reduce your ground clearance. And to measure the difference between the two, I have two very scientifically accurate instruments: an iPhone 14 Pro Max and a pack of Parle-G. So let's see how much is the clearance. So it's one iPhone and, well, a little less than a horizontally stacked packet of Parle-G. But in the Vellfire, it's one full iPhone and a vertically stacked Parle-G. So the Vellfire in this configuration has more clearance than the Carnival, but if you don't have the step on the side, then you can get more clearance with the Carnival. But either of these cars will not have a problem with most of the speed breakers. It's only when you take it on a rougher road, because of their long wheelbases, there is a chance that they might bottom out here and there. But for most paved roads, it's not going to be a problem. Well, it's features galore in the Vellfire. I mean, you're paying so much more, so obviously you should be getting a lot of features. For starters, the second row seats, well, these are power adjusted and I can do it from here, but I can also control these from all the way at the back and even from the front. And then I can also open up this area and get a full table for myself, which even comes with a mirror. Oh, and while the Carnival gets manual sunblinds for the second and the third row, the Vellfire gets powered ones, and they also do a much better job of covering the entire window compared to the blinds you see in the Carnival. And if you come to the back, while this is not an earth-shattering feature, but it is quirky indeed, you have two buttons here which operate the tailgate, and they're present on both sides of the Vellfire. So if I press this button, press and hold, it will open up the tailgate, and the one next to it, if I press and hold that, it will close it back again. Not only do you get a sunglass holder in the first row of the Vellfire, you also get it in the second and also in the third. And then of course you get two touch-enabled devices which can control things like your seat position, the air conditioning system, and even the lighting. So there is a lot you can do with this device, including getting a massage function so you can enjoy your drives a little more. Both the Carnival and the Vellfire come with heated and ventilated seats in the second row, but then the Vellfire takes it a step ahead with memory function for this row of seats, and that again is a pretty nifty feature. But the Carnival will not be undone without a fight. You see, it gets this really easy to use mechanism to fold the third row seats into the cavity over here. So you just pull this one lever and then that's it. It's much easier than the mechanism in the Vellfire where you have to open a few latches and then pull the seat down. This is much easier to execute, and once done, you get a very nice and flat floor, which means you can store a lot of luggage in this. In the Vellfire, the seats fold up in this area, and that kind of takes space awkwardly, and it also means that you can't fully bring the second row seats back. Both the Vellfire and Carnival come with 2 panes of sunroof, but they go about it in a very different way. You see, in the Carnival, you get the conventional sort of sunroof, and you can also open it up and it lets in a lot of light, makes the cabin feel very airy, very nice. But in the Vellfire, the sunroof is on the side, either sides, and they're quite narrow, and mostly they service the people in the second row. And also, they cannot be opened, which is a good thing because it means that people won't be poking their head out of a moving vehicle, but it does make it feel a little more dark, a little more closed off than the Carnival, which feels a little more airy. Surprisingly, even though the Vellfire is the more expensive of the two, it gets this conventional arm which you have to prop. The Carnival has these pneumatic arms which make opening the boot much easier. Design is a highly subjective topic and your opinion might differ from mine. I would love to know it in the comments below, but here are my 2 cents. The Vellfire, let's be honest, it looks like a big loaf of bread on wheels, but it does look quite classy. It has a very nice and minimalistic design almost all around, except for right here at the front where it gets this very menacing look with this new grille in this model. Also, there is a lot of chrome all around. So if chrome is something you like, then the Vellfire will definitely tickle your fancy. And I also really like this design element over here with the Vellfire badge. Toyota also does a very good job of blending the door rail channel within the design of the Vellfire compared to the design seen on the Carnival. That I think sticks out a little bit more. The higher price tag of the Vellfire also buys you tires which are an inch bigger than the ones on the Carnival. But honestly, the design of the Carnival's alloy is much better. In fact, with the wide tiger nose grille at the front along with the longer bonnet and other design choices all around even at the back, I think the Carnival looks much better. It has a more SUV-ish and more butch appeal, which I think my eyes like a bit more than the Vellfire. So, by charging double the price, does the Vellfire give you double the experience of the Carnival? Well, not really. You see, as you reach the 1 crore mark, you reach the point of diminishing returns, which means that by paying more money, you're not necessarily getting the same amount of gains that you would get in a smaller or a lower price bracket. But it must be said that the Carnival in this company looks terrific value for money. And I did not expect to be saying that, but in this company, it really does look value for money. And let's not forget that in some aspects, the Carnival did beat the Vellfire, so that is a commendable thing. It's a perfectly great MPV, especially if you are someone who wants a big vehicle for your family, for your long trips. And that way, the Kia will definitely be preferred by private owners, while the Vellfire, it gives you a whole lot more in terms of features, in terms of luxury, and in terms of refinement too. And this, I think, will be more suited to people who have a business, who want their clients to travel in the utmost amount of luxury. So for that, the Vellfire still is a great pick for the price that you are paying. And plus, you also get the rock solid Toyota reliability with the Vellfire, which definitely is a big plus point for this vehicle. That's all for today's video. If you liked this quirky comparison, make sure to hit the like button. Comment down below if you have any thoughts, any suggestions, or any comments, and we will be reading them all. And most importantly, if you have not subscribed to our channel, make sure to do that too. I'll see you again in the next one. Bye bye.